Hi, my name is Claudia Wert, and welcome to the Christus Vincit Foundation podcast. Today we are joined by Noah Peters, organizer of the Summorum Pontificum March in Arlington. Noah, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me. Just had a really exciting and fun march just this past Saturday. And I think there are some lessons that we can learn. And I think that trads can kind of bring to their communities. And so a lot to discuss about it.
That sounds great. So let's back up a sec. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey to the Latin Mass.
Yeah, so I'm a very new Catholic. I only converted in 2020. I only was baptized. I was secular Jewish beforehand, and so I went through kind of a Novus Ordo RCIA. You know, I didn't convert directly to kind of trad. It's something I kind of discovered over, and especially during COVID and navigating the weird rules around Mass and the weird closures. And I also, heard that St. Rita in Alexandria was like a really special place with a great, Father Guy was great. And so I checked it out a couple times. But I think having to navigate all the craziness with closures and Mass shutdowns, just going to the TLM just started feeling like really normal and natural. And I just got drawn into it in 2020. So when I met my wife, we would go to Mass every week. It would be like the thing that we did. It was really the foundation of our relationship in a lot of ways. So that's really, and it really became a special part of our relationship. And then we got married in an extraordinary form wedding in 2021, in October 2021. And so we kind of found each other and found the Mass kind of at the same time. And I think as with most people who do find the TLM, there was no way that I felt like I could really go back. It just was something that really drew me into a much deeper Catholicism, and made me interested in finding out more about the history of the church and saints and all of that sort of thing. So it really made me like a very deep kind of Catholic in a lot of ways.
Right. And I think that's the story we hear across the board. So what do you believe is the importance of preserving the Latin Mass in the modern age?
Well, I think the thing that I always think about the most with it is just that we need to bring people into the church. I mean, when people talk about declining birth rates, declining, infant baptisms, declining weddings, all of that, people falling away, family members falling away. I just look at the growth of the TLM and all of the energy and vibrancy that I've seen in the TLM, and just meeting people and, seeing large families, seeing young people, seeing converts. And so for me, the importance is we need to save the church. We need to have this as something that we can offer to the world as this kind of radical beauty and this timelessness that really speaks to the modern age so much more powerfully than I think really ever before in history. So I just see it as like an amazing vehicle to evangelize and to grow the church, because I think it really does hook people in. So with me, I just want to share my experience with others, and continue to help, bring people into the church. So I think that's the real importance, is when you look and you see a declining church throughout the world, and you see young people and you see young families just kind of yearning for the timelessness and beauty. And it's like the old Mass is there to kind of bridge the gap if we can only just allow it to happen in a way.
Right. So you see now not as a time to, sit back and retreat, but now is the time to take action.
Yes, more, and I think it's more important than ever to take action, because, I think the restrictions, which we'll talk about more, are inspired by the fact that people are finding the older liturgical form in a big way. You see just the growth over the past couple of years has been tremendous. And so I think we can't lose sight of the fact that this is the future. This is something, these communities are things that are very special, that we need to continue to nurture and grow. And we can't one of the things I think we should always avoid is trying to get into a defensive crouch in a way. I think there is room for defensiveness in some areas, and there's room for restraint in some areas. But I think that, the world right now really needs to come back to the church. I think that's what we all believe as Catholics, and we need to feel that urgency and that passion. And I think that's what's going to continue to bring people in and continue to grow the church.
Let's segment for just a second and talk about attitudes, because you're bringing up a lot of these words like urgency and action. And what kind of attitude should we have towards this movement of preserving the Latin Mass? In what spirit should we be approaching this?
Yeah, I think that it's really a call to action is the way that I think we need to deal with it. For me, seeing the restriction, talk of restrictions even in December, even before they went into effect, it really spurred me to want to do something. So I started out, getting together a petition, doing an open letter to the bishop, and this was something I knew almost no one. It wasn't like I was enmeshed in the TLM community at that point. I mean, I had only been in the church for like a year and a half. So for me, I just went on Facebook, a Facebook group, and I just started writing about how we need to do something, about these restrictions, send a message about how we don't want these restrictions to go into effect, because this was before they were announced. So I ended up doing an open letter, very respectful, very nice. I had guidance. I talked to a lot of people in the community about it. It was workshopped very extensively. It was a very respectful, very nice letter. We put it on change.org, and it ended up getting, we had no idea how many people would sign it. It ended up getting about 3,000 signatures from all over the world. Now it's up to 3,500. But it was just an amazing response. I mean, I never thought that we would have, I thought, maybe 100 or so people might sign it. I don't know if I was being ambitious, but like it really took off. And so I thought, wow, that's, I can do something. So, we made a bit, I printed it out. A lot of people left really beautiful comments about how, their families had come back into the church, family members, how to deepen their faith, how their kids love the TLM. We had all sorts of comments like that. And so we printed out like the best comments. We printed out a very nice letter, hand delivered it to the chancery, in terms of preserving the Latin Mass. And then when the restrictions came down, I just felt this urgency to kind of do something again. So we started doing so just on the spur of the moment after the restrictions in Arlington came down, I said we should go pray the rosary in front of the nunciature, for restoration of the Latin Mass. And we got 4 people for the first one. I announced it the night before. But from there, those rosary rallies, which I did, ended up growing into the pilgrimage, which we did last week, which got, several hundred people there. So we started, so it was really just a spirit of wanting to being really motivated to want to take some positive action here. It was just, I didn't want to sit on my computer and complain. I didn't want to be online and because I felt like, and it was really just a feeling, when these restrictions came down, like, it would have felt worse not to do anything, in a big way. So it was really just a way of just kind of feeling out what can we do, and that's really what propelled it.
So you essentially came into the Latin Mass just as Traditionis Custodes, or right before Traditionis Custodes came out. So how has that affected your ability to celebrate the TLM, specifically in the Diocese of Arlington?
Well, it has already had a negative effect, because we used to go to D.C. There were beautiful TLMs in D.C. that my wife and I would go to, and they're all pretty much all shut down now. There was very nice. There was a recurring one on Saturday. They'd have at St. Thomas the Apostle, where they'd have a lecture and they'd have like a potluck, and it was great. And whenever they would do it, my wife and I used to go, and now it's not an option for us anymore. It's definitely been a lot worse in DC. In Arlington, right near DC, there hasn't really been any change to St. Rita and St. John the Beloved, so we can still go to the ones in McLean and Alexandria. But we did used to go a lot in DC, and the ones in DC are almost all gone, except for one Sunday Mass at the Franciscan Monastery, which isn't even every day. That's not on Easter, not on Christmas, etc.
Tragic. That's truly a tragic change.
Yeah, it's really, and these just came down like a couple days ago, the restrictions in DC. So it's kind of in a way, we're all sort of in a state of shock. Like they're really not going to have TLM at St. Mary anymore. Like they're really not going to have TLM at all these different places. It's like for us, I think a lot of people are still kind of in disbelief.
That's a life-changing experience for sure.
Yeah.
So before we get into your work with the Summorum Pontificum March, can you give us a little background? What is Summorum Pontificum?
Yeah, so basically you had the old Mass, you had the promulgation of the Novus Ordo in about 1970, and then you had a little bit of resistance and attempts to be like, no, we have to do all Novus Ordo now, and some attempts to make Novus Ordo normative, but there were always exceptions that were made, such as for older priests. So there was never, usually when a new edition of the Missal comes out, it abrogates and supersedes every previous edition. That never really happened with the Novus Ordo and the TLM. There were always permissions granted for communities, for priests to use the TLM. Now there was there were also permissions that were denied in many cases. So, but over time, there started to be more and more what they called indults granted for certain areas and certain communities to celebrate the TLM. There was the Ecclesia Dei in 1988, Pope John Paul II promulgated, which created the Fraternal Society of St. Peter, which is like a Latin Mass community within the Catholic Church. And then with Summorum Pontificum, it was said, Pope Benedict said basically that any priest has the right to say the TLM, that there are really two forms of the Latin rite. There's a Novus Ordo and there's a TLM. They're kind of on equal footing in a sense, where they're both valid, and any priest can celebrate either form without any permission from the Vatican or from his bishop or anything like that. So it was really, in a way, a revolution. In a way, it was a very important moment for the TLM, and that's what allowed the growth. It enabled, in a lot of ways, the growth of the TLM that we've seen in the last 15 years, because it established saying the TLM is a right of priests throughout the world.
That makes complete sense. So what was the specifically of this pilgrimage? You named it the Summorum Pontificum Pilgrimage. Give us a little bit about the background and what you hope to accomplish.
Yeah, so we always said with the pilgrimage that there were two aims of it, which was to first off just show our tremendous gratitude and love for the TLM and for all it's done for all of us in our lives. The TLM is so much bigger than any of us. I mean, it's the Mass of the Ages. When you look at the devotion that all the saints had to it, I mean, we celebrate St. Padre Pio today, who cried during Mass and was just overcome by it, and it nurtured the spiritual lives of so many Catholics for so many thousands of years, and it's nurtured and it's touched us, and so we just want to give appreciation for the fact that we have been able to experience it, and then also to make a show of sorrow and prayer over Traditionis Custodes and the attempts to restrict it that have come about in the last year and a half, and to show how heartbroken, how sad we are, and really to pray for an end to those restrictions, because I think that any intention that you have should be prayed for. I mean, you should take it to prayer. And when you join everyone's prayers together, it just makes it all the more powerful. So it was something that we wanted to do to really just make a public show of prayer. And I think also while we were doing it, I think we have to retake space as Catholics, and especially as traditional Catholics, and so seeing beautiful processional crosses and Marian banners and all of that through the streets of DC and Arlington, it was really just a show of how much we have to contribute to the world, and how important it is for us as trads to kind of take up space.
That's a really great way of saying it, because retaking spaces is a term used often in community organizing. And there's a lot of tactics of community organizing that can be very helpful to the TLM community. So let's get into the practical aspects of the march. Tell us a little bit about how it was advertised, how it was planned, and the final execution.
Yeah, so really, as I said, we started doing the rosary rallies, and only a few people attended at first. But the people who attended were very, very committed. And that's why I think you can't underestimate the power of just taking action and just being like the first one out. Because a lot of people were saying, I wish someone would have done something. I wasn't the one to do it, but I'm just so appreciative that you went ahead and moved forward on it and just said, okay, here's what we're doing. We're going to have a march, it's going to be this date. And then once you announce the intention like that, then so many of the details just start filling themselves in if you're willing to listen, and people emerge. And I felt like people would just emerge and saying, oh, I can help with this. I can help with that. I know this person. You should do this. Like, you should have buses come pick people up at the end. When we posted it on Facebook, people said, well, there'll be buses coming to pick us up. And at first I was thinking, well, can't people just go back themselves? Like, is that big a deal? But then over time, I thought about it. I was like, no, that's going to encourage people to come. That's going to make it a lot bigger if we have buses there to drive people back, for example. So then you think, well, how do we do that? So we started a Give, Send, Go, a fundraiser. We said, hey, if we'd like to get buses, let's, donate to the Give, Send, Go. And then it ended up getting financed. We ended up raising enough money. So in terms of like the media contacts, we just drew on who we knew. Do we know anyone at, LifeSite? Do we know anyone at any other publications? At a lot of these publications, there were trads and trad adjacent people who wanted to cover the march, who thought it was important, who were affected by it. It helped, in a lot of ways that we are in DC, because everything gets magnified in DC. I mean, there's a lot of media here. So it's perhaps a little easier here. But we just started a lot of signal groups, a lot of Facebook chats, and just bringing people in and connecting people. And I think that was the biggest thing, was just being kind of radically proactive, but also radically open to collaborating with different people. So just being like, oh, this person knows this person, I'll put you in a chat with, and then you can talk about stuff. So really through the rosary rallies, and then through building off of the contacts that we made through the rosary rallies, we were able to get, raise some money. We were able to get media attention. We were able to get graphics. I mean, we ended up being like, well, somebody was like, I can do graphics. So it's the type of thing where if you just start being open to collaborating with people in this community, people are so passionate about the Mass that a lot of times people will just come forward and say, I can do this, I can do that, I have this capability, I have that capability.
And that's the power of proactive networking, and I think you've learned that in a very real way.
Yes, yeah, I think it's just like really being extroverted, being willing to talk to people, being determined to make contacts, within the community. But that's the thing, which is I didn't know anyone a year and a half ago, or really just a year ago. This all really came together in the last 8 months or so. But it's just about being open and about having a goal in mind, and you can really make a lot happen. But it's the same thing, in business too. Being extroverted, being willing to, being goal-oriented, being willing to meet with people, being very proactive, all of that, it's the same kind of principle. But if you bring that kind of energy to bear, you can do something, you can do great things in a lot of ways.
Completely agreed. So let's get a recap of the day's events. How did it start? Where did you? What was the pilgrimage route? Where did you end up? And what was the kind of final wrap up? What did that look like?
So yeah, we started at St. Thomas More Cathedral in Arlington, and we had tables there with water and snacks set up, and then we had people just kind of assemble. We picked a spot beforehand where everyone would assemble. We had a really nice, I think the banners in the processional crosses and kind of the visual elements all kind of came together pretty well. We had, we were able to borrow some stuff from folks. Folks, would have crosses and, would have banners. And so, yes, we all gathered at St. Thomas More. We had a live stream there. We had Breitbart live streaming it, which was really cool. So when I was doing it, and then we started out by chanting the Divine Office. We started off by chanting the 9 a.m. one, terse, and then we were on our way. I had to spend at the beginning, and then we also had a U-Haul to kind of drive to St. Matthew to set up tables with water there, which was important, and to kind of set up in front of on the stairs in front of the cathedral for when we all got there. We weren't able to get mass afterwards, but it was fine, and nobody really ended up noticing. We tried a lot to get mass, and it didn't work out. But and that's another thing. Obviously, is if things don't work out, don't let it. You just got to come up with another plan, because I don't think anybody noticed the fact that we didn't have mass afterwards. Everyone was extremely excited about it. So anyway, so we ventured off down the street, and I spent a lot of time with the live stream. I had walked the route beforehand, so I kind of had a sense of it. And so I was kind of like leading and telling people, go this way, go that way. And then people on the march, some people started singing. Well, we had a program with different hymns that folks did, beautiful like Latin hymns, like Salve Regina and all that. And then, but the thing is, the procession was so long that different parts were doing different things at the time. But so at the front, we started doing a rosary, which was very cool. It was almost like a kind of military style thing where we would do it like very aggressively, like Hail Mary, Mother, Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners out the hour of our death. Amen. Hail Mary, full of grace, a kind of like call and response type format. But it was really great. I enjoyed it. It made the walk go a lot quicker. Very kind of beautiful. So we actually were fortunate to have public bathrooms in the middle of the march. So it worked out well logistically, and that's something that I had to do, was kind of walk the route and figure out what the best route was, and then the logistics, like where we would stop. We ended up having just one stop, and it was fine, right in the middle, to use because there were public bathrooms right there. Then we walked across the Key Bridge, which was a beautiful, like kind of very dramatic moment, to walk across the Potomac. And we got great footage. I mean, we had all of these, a lot of great photographers and videographers. We got great footage of us crossing the Potomac, and then we went down M Street, finished the pilgrimage, the walking part of it, and then I just decided, like right there, because we had the live stream, we had people recording it, and so I just decided, well, we'll do a speech. Now, I had written out a speech, which was something that I did not want to do beforehand. I was going to just kind of maybe just say thank you to everybody, and then kind of step off. But one of the people I was working with was like, no, you should make a speech. It's going to be a very dramatic moment. Everybody will just walk 2 hours. It was 5 miles, 2 hour walk. You should, when everyone's there, you should give a speech. And so, I realized I would have to write it out beforehand. It wouldn't have been any good if I tried to do it extemporaneously. I've learned that I can't speak extemporaneously like that. So I wrote out a speech, and we had a mic there, and it was just great. I mean, the speech really, people loved it. They were very excited. I mean, just, about the importance of the Mass. And people really loved the speech and really appreciated it. And it was kind of a very dramatic moment, and a kind of an appropriate culmination to the march. And then we chanted Divine Office, the Hour of Sex on the steps. And then people went on their way and went to the buses, and it all just went off perfectly. There really wasn't any serious logistical hurdles that we had. We had been thinking about it so much over the course of several weeks, but it all really mattered. I mean, all of the thought that we put into it in terms of like getting a permit, making contact with the police departments, all of that stuff ended up paying off in a big way.
That seems very well organized, and it sounds like it went off without a hitch. Now, I'm curious, what did you get from the people on the street?
So say that again. Sorry.
What kind of response did you get from everyday bystanders?
Actually, really good. One of the cameramen got great footage of a guy holding up a rosary as we were walking by, which I thought was really, really cool. People were all like really paying attention to what we were doing, and I think people were really fascinated by it, interested in it, and intrigued by it. We saw people crossing themselves on the way. So yeah, I think we got a really good response from bystanders, and that's like the contrast between. I think people are always attracted to beauty and reverence. I think those are inherently attractive qualities. So to see a lot of people marching, with Catholic banners and crosses and praying and singing beautiful Marian hymns, it's just it can't help but to make an impact, because it does draw such a strong contrast, to the world and to the streets and to the kind of day-to-day life, to have something that's so kind of radically Catholic in a way. I think did make a big impression.
No, that makes complete sense. Now, let's talk about what effect you believe that this pilgrimage had on the diocese. And do you think it communicated the spirit of goodwill?
Yes, I think I do think so. I think that it was, the people. I think the priests and the bishops. We have very close bonds with them. And I think that they appreciated the fact that we were able to pull this together so quickly, and to see, I think, for Catholics, you can't help but to be touched when you see people praying the rosary, or when you see people, with processional crosses. And so I think that it did make an impact in terms of showing, that this is really a vital part of the church. That these people really care very deeply about the Mass, and they care very deeply about the church. We tried, so I think it ended up being seen as something that people couldn't help but to be a little bit impressed by all the effort and by all the passion that we had. It wasn't like a conference, and it was a very spiritual thing. It was a very kind of religiously oriented thing. I didn't want it to look like, one of the reasons to make it with the banners and the torches and the and to control the signs, is we didn't want it to look like a political protest. I mean, to have people at the front all wearing suits, stuff like that, that was all very coordinated, because we don't want it to look like a protest with people holding angry signs and you kind of like, I don't know what people do at protests where they go, hey ho, we won't go, I don't know what they do, but we didn't want it to look like that kind of a protest. We wanted it to be a pilgrimage, like a spiritual experience. And we made a point of saying we're praying for our bishops, we're praying for the church, all of that. And it was really true. I mean, we meant it to have a kind of transcendent purpose, and not just to be, hey, we're here and we're angry, that sort of thing.
That makes sense, and it's good that professional appearance up front. I think that definitely makes a big difference.
Yeah.
So what kind of conversations has this sparked, or connections with other TLM groups across the country?
That's a good question. I think that it really has drawn a lot of interest, national interest. And when you look at like all the media coverage that we were able to get, we have a lot of, I think it's really turned, it really drew attention to the restrictions in a lot of ways. And I think it kind of helped to fix to bring attention to the fact that the bishops in the Archdiocese of D.C. were really cracking down. So I do hope that it fosters a sense of that we're all in this together as trads, and that we can help each other across different communities, because we did get a lot of national media coverage.
That's fantastic. And you think, we were talking before this, and you mentioned that this model could be used in other dioceses. And do you think that other people are picking up on the idea of having a similar type of event?
Well, I really hope that they do. I think that this is a time of real confusion and real crisis in society and in the church. And I think that the laity needs to be activated in a big way, in terms of, and there's so much that we can do. And so I think I would really encourage people from other communities, to start drawing together and building closer Catholic communities, start getting together to pray the rosary every week, start forming those rosary groups, start planning. Marian processions are a beautiful Catholic tradition. They happen all over the world. They've been exploding in popularity in the last 5 years. They're a really great feature of the kind of trad revival, and there's something that Catholics everywhere have done for centuries, and they're really easy to organize. If I can do it, anyone can do it. So I think that these are all great ways to draw together as kind of traditionalist communities. But I think that it's important, it's really important to build those strong Catholic communities, to start getting out and meeting people. I mean, one thing that's even come out of this in a small way is we've started having a potluck after our TLM. We never used to do that. We started having a monthly potluck. So if you're not doing that, if you're not having, potlucks, if you're not, praying the rosary together, if you're not doing those things, like start doing those as a trad community and start building those, because you're not going to be able, I mean, these are tough times. And it gets so much easier when you have other people that can help and that you can rely on. So, in this area, I think one of the many great facets of this has been that we're trying to build these kind of traditionalist, tight-knit Catholic communities. And I think, the pilgrimage and the rosary rallies and all the stuff that we've been doing here have helped spur that and accelerate that. But, people all over, trads all over the country, there's so much to benefit from doing that.
Yeah, agreed. Now's the time to do community building, especially because of all the restrictions. I think pulling together is now more important than ever. And this pilgrimage has been a big help in that respect. So Is there anything to do differently for next year?
Well, we'd start planning it earlier. It came together. I was inspired in a big way by the restrictions, and they were only announced on July 29th. So this all came together in about a month and a half. But we definitely want to start planning earlier, and start, making sure that it becomes an annual thing. In terms of what we would do specifically, I think that the singing was great. I think if we had had more time, we could have gotten even more people from kind of the choirs and the scholas together, to do, to have even more people who really have the singing, the singing experience. But we did have tremendous singing, but it would have been nice to have had even more. But yeah, I think the other thing is just that if you do it once, I think it gets a lot easier, because when I started doing that, I had no idea I'd never planned anything like this before. So yeah, I mean, I think I have a lot more of kind of a map of how the planning would go this time, because the first time doing it this time, I just kind of really just had to listen to people. It was almost like when people are forced to land planes and they don't know how to fly, and the air traffic control is kind of telling them what to do. It's like, now do this, now do that, now pull this way. That's kind of what it felt like in a way, because I just really had to listen to other people and just do exactly what people were suggesting, or really listen to people. So now I think I would have a lot more perspective. But I think in terms of getting attendance up and all of that sort of thing, it's definitely easier if people can mark their calendars well in advance.
Agreed. Yes, advanced planning is always important. So if anybody's interested in the March for next year or helping you plan, what's the best way to get in contact with you?
So we do have the TLM pilgrimage website still up, and that has our contact information on it. We do encourage people to get in touch with us. Basically, it's media@tlmpilgrimage.com. You can reach our TLM pilgrimage page. Go to tlmpilgrimage.com. The website will continue to be up. We also today are launching something new, which is kind of an offshoot of the pilgrimage, in which we hope we'll be able to really build it and grow it. So what we've launched the Arlington Latin Mass Society, which has its own webpage, which I will get the link for in a second. But we have also built subpages with it for all the different TLM parishes within the Diocese of Arlington. So it's latinmassarlington.org, and that's going to become kind of a permanent webpage that we have for the TLM community in the Diocese of Arlington, and you can reach that at info@latinmassarlington.org. And what we're going to do is to try to build out a 501c3 to just support the maintenance and growth of the Latin Mass in the Diocese of Arlington, and hopefully all over the country, and use that as kind of build a little bit of a organization there.
Well, that's excellent. And links to all of those will be in the video description below.
Yes.
All right, excellent. Well, it seems like we're out of time for today, but thank you so much for coming on the program, and we hope to have you on again very shortly.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, you've been listening to the Christus Vincit Foundation podcast with Claudia Wert, Executive Director of the Christus Vincit Foundation. Our guest has been Noah Peters, organizer of the Summorum Pontificum March. Thank you so much for joining us, and we hope to join you again next time.